Welcome to Module 3, Ethics and Intercountry Adoption. My name is Emily Spackman. I am the Hague Specialist and Intercountry Family Coordinator for Premier Adoption Agency. And you did it. You made it to the last module, so congratulations. We're going to go over a little bit of some of our policies at Premier Adoption Agency. Specifically, we're going to look at how that relates to intercountry adoption, Hague, which is something that I will refer to quite frequently. We're referencing specifically the Hague standards for 9638A5 and 9636A and B. So for those of you that are maybe wondering, what does Hague mean when using the term Hague? In adoption, Hague refers specifically to the Hague Convention. This convention is on the protection of children and cooperating in respect of intercountry adoption. So it's essentially an international treaty that has set up standards for ethical, transparent, and child-focused international adoptions. It's basically to protect the children, birth parents, adoptive parents from abuse and exploitation. But not all countries are a part of the Hague Convention. The United States is, and therefore we honor our Hague laws and regulations. So as the Hague specialist, I am a little more versed in those things, and so today we're going to go over a little bit of those policies that are going to cover those Hague standards. So specifically today we're going to start off with the ethical practice policy. This is Premier's policy, particularly pertaining to intercountry adoption taking place in the best interest of the child. Everything we do in adoption, we think about, is this in the best interest of the child? This is repeatedly something that we discuss when talking with birth mothers, with talking with adoptive parents, other agencies, other entities. The biggest thing is this in the best interest of the child? And that's what we're going to talk about today with our ethical practice policy. The second part of that policy is the prevention of abduction, exploitation, sale, or trafficking of children, which all are not in the best interest of the child. So some of our guidelines when talking about our ethical practice policy, like I said, we're going to adhere to the principles of the Hague Convention. So we as an agency are currently licensed with the countries of Canada, Ireland, and the UK. So our intercountry adoptive families are coming from those three places at this current time. In the past, we've worked with Switzerland, we worked with the Netherlands. Who knows what we could be working with in the future, but for now, we're working with Ireland, the UK, and Canada, which all other countries, which they as well adhere to the principles of the Hague Convention, which is the prohibition of child buying and inducement. So is everything in the best interest of that child by prohibiting that child buying and inducement, not just child buying, but also the inducement of release of that child or persuasion even. So we're going to talk a little bit about how we ensure that all payments to Premier Adoption Agency are documented and transparent so that there's no persuasion, there's no inducement, and that those that are compensated for services that are done with intercountry adoption are actually being paid for the services that were actually rendered and no additional payment is provided. Premier also works on preventing conflicts of interest and third-party referrals. And really, we do not accept donations from waiting adoptive parents, because then again, it gets into that idea of persuasion, inducement, and we don't want any of that. We want to be as clear as possible. We want it to be as clean as possible so that genuinely the adoption is in the best interest of the child and that money is not playing a role in that persuasion or inducement. So how are we compliant with this ethical policy? Um, so this is just a few of the ideas of the things that we do. Screening and background checks on prospective adoptive parents. I comb through their home studies, and we're talking big, huge home studies. And what's great is our international home study providers, those that are doing those home studies internationally, do a thorough job. I have received home studies that are like 72 pages before, like absurd. Like that is a book at this point about their lives. And I sit and read that and screen through it and make sure that they are a family that we want to work with, that we are the right agency for them, and that there's no conflict of interest. We also, as an agency, adhere to legal procedures such as the Hague Convention, as mentioned before. And like I said, that Hague Convention is that international treaty that is set between different countries, with the common goal that we are preventing abuse and exploitation of children. We also have thorough assessments of birth parents. This is not only done internationally for our intercountry families, but also done for our domestic families as well. Informed consent. There is a document for everything. And something we'd like to continue with is initial and ongoing training to staff. These modules are a great start to things, and I think that we have lots of room to grow and learn, and we're always changing in the world, so it's good to have ongoing training. And we as an agency receive regular audits and monitoring. We receive our Hague accreditation every 4 years, and then yearly we are audited for Arizona and Utah and Nevada. So we're up to date on our audits, and we're definitely monitored, that's for sure. And then obviously we have that child-centered approach that is our goal as an agency, that we prioritize the child's safety, health, and emotional well-being. So we do prohibit employees, agents, contract providers, affiliates from giving money or other consideration directly or indirectly to child's parents or individuals. So no adoptive families are paying off social workers for hopes of being placed more quickly or inducement of a child being released and so forth. The goal is to work ethically and diligently on behalf of the best interest of our children that we're working with. No monetary donations, as discussed earlier, or directly to birth parents or adoption facilitators. So we're not donating money to other foreign entities, nor are foreign entities donating money to us. And Ireland's not saying, hey, work with our families, take our money. It's definitely not a part of Premier's process. And that leads into our improper payments. All agency employees are strictly prohibited from engaging or facilitating in any improper financial inducements to birth parents, intermediaries, or foreign officials. So this also includes that, like, if we are receiving any payments, no employee is to be able to receive a payment in any way. The only employees that are receiving payments are our accountants and bookkeepers. They're the ones that manage the money and bill and do the wiring. No financial transactions should be made to any other employee at Premier, and that's in direct violation with the Hague Convention. We want to keep our Hague accreditation. We want to be able to provide services for international adoption, and we'd love to continue with that. And accepting payments in any form that are improper is not the route we want to take. So that leads us to birth mother expenses, because that's the thing, that's the changing money that we're always working with, right? We as an agency follow the laws for the states of Nevada, Arizona, and Utah, but we also adhere to the laws that we're working with in the countries that families reside from as well. So if a family's from Ireland, we are also required to adhere to their laws as well. And that's a part of that Hague Convention that we're agreeing to. We may be able to receive reasonable payments for activities for birth mother expenses. That's how we are able to provide for these birth mothers and make this even feasible as an agency. The goal is that those living expenses cover medical costs, child care, prenatal and postnatal care, and the provision of child welfare and child protection services. So really just covering the bare necessities are what those birth mother expenses are. And I think that our team does a great job of creating those budgets and making a plan for those birth mother expenses. None of these expenses are used as inducement to the birth mother for her to release the child. That's not the goal. The goal is that we are just covering those bare necessities for that birth mother. And she can always change her mind. We are not requiring her to stay with an agency. And if she is going to change her mind, we're on it. We know that those funds end if she is no longer adhering to her adoption plan or moving forward with her adoption plan. As I stated, that last one there is Premier's accounting department handles invoices and requisitions for payments. So no other employees are to be handling those invoices or payments. And we can ensure in compliance with these laws and by holding one another accountable. If we are accused of giving money or other consideration directly or indirectly to a child's parent, other individual, or other entity of payment for the child or inducement to release the child, accusations, evidence, and records will be brought before their immediate supervisor, executive director, and the board of directors. So it's a big deal. If there is any accusation of this, there will be consequences, and it's not great. So really, if there's any moment of, if we hear of any of this, really just report it to your supervisor. The last thing we would want is there to be confusion on this at all. And hopefully that evidence is not substantiated, but if it is, that the employee has given money or accepted directly or indirectly, has maybe even implied it, if there's documentation of that and it has been substantiated, there will be consequences, and the employee or agency will be accountable for those actions, and the employment status will be based on the discretion of the board of directors. I, in my time with Premier, have never seen anything like this, and I would hope that we can continue in that path. The greatest thing to consider is the physical and psychological impacts of violating these policies, and that the impact that it has on the child, birth parents, and adoptive families. So I guess the biggest question is, what are the legal consequences of giving or receiving money directly or indirectly? Those are all listed there. So violation is a felony punishable by years in prison. It's child trafficking that we're talking about here. And as an agency, we do our best to avoid that. And hopefully that's never something that we even have to come across. So we may have to report potential violations as if something is to come up, if we receive an email, if there's any question that we have, report it immediately to your supervisor or Catherine, our executive director. Provide as much documentation as you can and record it in our database, record it in SAM. Record keeping is the way to good evidence in all of this. So when we talk a little bit about those birth mother expenses, they're collected from our families in advance, and all expenses are given to the birth parents in incremental amounts. Usually as Premier, we're doing our best to pay everything we can directly, and everything's documented. Premier documents these expenses by paying a third-party vendor whenever possible. So if we're paying for utilities, if we're paying for a phone bill, insurance, as an agency, we pay for that directly versus handing any money to our birth parents. We don't want there to be any confusion of inducement in this work that we do. Prospective adoptive families don't transfer any fees directly to expectant parents. And as social workers, we're often monitoring, and caseworkers, we're monitoring these chats between the family and the families, the birth families and adoptive families. So it's good for us to be keeping track that there's no transfer of fees directly. And that's why we're not giving direct phone numbers to each other, because we're preventing that from birth mom saying, hey, if you give me $2,000 extra, I'll let you have my child. Like, I don't know, like, we are doing our best to monitor those chats so that we can make sure that there isn't any hidden business behind closed doors. And as we all know, all birth parent expenses are wired and transferred to the agency, and the agency documents how and when those expenses are given to expectant mother. So if there's ever a question on how many birth mother's expenses have been used, we know, because we've been documenting it. So really, we are monitoring all and everything that we possibly can when it comes to finances, when it comes to this child trafficking, inducement. We're doing our best to be proactive and monitor and be ahead of the game. As I stated, we are monitoring those chats. Our social workers and case managers are facilitating and overseeing communication whenever possible and appropriate, which is most of the time before placement. We're to remain actively involved in the communication between the prospective adoptive families and birth families. So there's to be some transparency in all this. The whole point of all this is for us all to be transparent. We provide the prospective adoptive parents an itemized list of fees and expenses, and they can expect through the adoption process. So they have an expectation. They know what we're going to be asking of them. The only fee that really varies for them is that birth mother expenses. And it shows them at what point everything is due and when it's going to be paid. So usually we're pretty spot on our budgets. And if there's ever a time that we need to ask for more expenses, if there's an emergency with birth mom and there needs to be more than what was expected for expenses, especially anything over $1,000, we are to contact the prospective adoptive parents directly and receive authorization from them in writing before paying additional expenses on their case. So that's applicable to like our office team who maybe are a little more communicative with those prospective adoptive parents. And really that bill and communication happens with our accounting team. It's not like anyone in the office is receiving that extra money. That any extra expenses over $1,000 is really communicated with directly with that family. And as you can see, it's a bigger deal. Like if we have to ask more than what we've already quoted, we have to receive that authorization from them to move forward. So that moves us on to our compensation policy. Premier does not provide incentive or contingency fees or compensation to any individual who provides intercountry adoption services for each child placed for adoption. So there's no incentive for Ireland to work with us. There's no incentive for the UK to work with us. There's no incentive for Canada to work with us other than providing opportunities that can benefit the child and be in the best interest of the child. So we're not making extra payments. We're not promising payments. Everything that is received as a payment is identified on those fee schedules. There's no additional fees that are added later. So those are all very explained and brought out. So this kind of breaks down our compensation policy a little bit. Premier compensates its directors, officers, employees, supervised providers, individuals, and entities involving an intercountry adoption only for the services actually rendered. So obviously, the work that you're doing, you're going to get paid for. No additional payment is going to be, no bonuses for intercountry work. Compensation is never based on the successful completion of an adoption or contingent upon placement outcomes. So there's no like, well, you get $1,000 bonus if the placement goes through. Can you imagine? um, and our contingency fee per placement bonuses and commission-based payments for referrals are prohibited. So I kind of discussed that a little bit earlier. Premier requires conflicts of interest to be disclosed. So if there is a conflict of interest, it's disclosed to our families. If there's a relative relation, any kind of conflict of interest would be disclosed to the families, would be disclosed to you, and that any of those relationships that would exist with a vendor. So let's say I'm cousins with the CEO of VRBO or Airbnb, and I refer my families to Airbnb all the time when they come to the United States. If my sister was the executive director of Airbnb, I'd have to disclose that. No, I'm not, but if I did have that relation, we would disclose that to the family and let them know that we have familial relationships, we have conflicts of interest when suggesting vendors, but more often than not, we really don't have that conflict of interest. Not any of us are related to that Airbnb or the visa expediting process or the passport expediting process. So a lot of those vendors that we suggest to our families are not familial relationships. But if there are, let us know so that we can disclose that to the family. Keep us informed. So moving on to the next policy is our donation policy. So I kind of discussed this a little bit with our ethical policy, but our donation policy specifically, we've all signed, all of our families are aware of the donation policy, and they sign a document understanding that what our donation policy is, and that is that prospective adoptive parents who are waiting for a child referral, waiting for a placement or a child referral, and prior to adoption finalization are not allowed to make a personal donation to the agency. It really is, this is just mostly a safety to ensure that donations are not influencing child placement decisions. So the more rich a family is, the more money that they donate, the faster we're preventing the possibility of them being placed or matched more quickly than other families. Everybody has equal right when it comes to finances and adoption. That the playing field is the same. There's no preferential treatment. So if there is a family that's donating or tries to donate, or if we were accepting donations, receiving lots of donations, it would be hard not to give them preferential treatment. So we've just leveled the playing field by saying we don't receive any donations by those prospective adoptive families prior to finalization. The goal in general is to not give preferential treatment to anyone, not only prospective adoptive parents, but also including board members, contributors, volunteers, employees, agents, consultants, or independent contractors, with the respect to placement of children for adoption. Really, anyone that has an affiliation with the agency is not going to have their adoption expedited and must follow the same process as everyone else, as all the other clients, and be aware that there is no preferential treatment in Premier Adoption Agency. And if you do feel like there is a problem, if you are feeling concerned about something, there's something that makes you feel uneasy, it is possible for you to come forward and talk with your supervisor. Don't stay silent. Speak up. Reach out to your supervisor, whether that be the director of operations, whether that be the executive director. Reach out and share as much detail as you can. Documentation is great. Any written documentation is really beneficial so that the concern can actually be addressed appropriately. We're working as a team on behalf of children, and we're all in this together. We all have the best interests of the child in mind. And as many of the send-offs on the emails that I've seen is teamwork makes the dream work. And I believe that. I mean, we work together so that we can be a better agency. So I appreciate you taking the time and listening to me talk about these policies. I feel very passionate about the work that I do. I love working with our international families. They bring me so much joy and happiness, and intercountry adoption is beautiful. And I'm grateful to even have a possibility and a hand in this big game that we play. We are a team, we work together. So if you have any questions or concerns about what we learned today, if you had further questions about the policies, don't hesitate to reach out to your supervisor. You can reach out to me as well. And then you will be receiving a certificate of completion in your email once all 3 modules have been completed. So thank you for your time. Have a great day.